Introduction. The body is supported within or around by a hard framework called skeleton. In the vertebrates, the skeletal system is mainly divided into exoskeleton and endoskeleton. Bones and cartilages are the hard, supporting parts present inside the body, forming endoskeleton. The study of bones is called osteology. Human endoskeleton is mainly bony with some supporting cartilages. The human endoskeleton consists of 206 bones in an adult. The skeleton performs many functions. It gives definite shape to the body and protects the internal vital organs like heart, brain, lungs, etc. The bones and cartilages provide surface for the attachment of muscles and also act as a system of lever and help in movement of body parts and locomotion. Red bone marrow present at the ends of long bones and spongy bones help in production of RBCs and other blood cells. Bones act as storehouse of calcium, phosphorus, magnesium salts. Let us first have a look at internal movements. These include movements which may be voluntary or involuntary. 3 types of muscles bring about these movements. Example: A. Peristaltic movements in the alimentary canal, constriction and dilation of blood vessels, etc. These are controlled by smooth muscles. B. Contraction and relaxation of the heart is controlled by cardiac muscles. C. Movements of limbs, head, trunk, eyeballs, etc. are controlled by striated muscles. Second, locomotion. Locomotion is the characteristic feature of animals which distinguishes the animals from plants. It is willful or voluntary act of displacement. The change in locus of whole body of living organism from one place to another place is called locomotion. There are 4 basic types of locomotions found throughout the animal kingdom, such as 1. Amoeboid movement performed by pseudopodia, for example, leucocytes. 2. Ciliary movements performed by cilia, example, ciliated epithelium. 3. Whirling movement performed by flagella, example, sperms. 4. Muscular movement performed by muscles, example, limb movements. Locomotion includes act of walking, running, creeping, swimming, hopping, flying, leaping, and jumping. In higher animals, locomotion is performed by skeletal muscles. Human locomotion is the combined action of bones, joints, and skeletal muscles. During locomotion, bones serve as lever, joints as fulcrum, and the skeletal muscles generate force. Location and structure of striated muscle. The muscle which moves a body part usually do not lie in that part but are located in the upper part. For example, biceps and triceps that move forearm are located in the upper arm. At any joint, two types of bones are present, that is, stationary and movable. The end of muscle attached to stationary bone is called origin, while the opposite end attached to movable bone is called insertion. The middle thick part of muscle is called belly. All the fibers in a muscle do not extend from end to end, and there is a maximum concentration in the middle. Thus, large muscles are most often fusiform in shape. Types of striated muscles. On the basis of movements, striated muscles are of three types. First, prime movers or agonist. They bring initial movement of part. For example, biceps. Second, antagonists. They bring the action opposite to that part of prime movers. For example, triceps. Third, synergists. They assist prime movers. For example, brachialis, assist biceps. Working of skeletal muscles. Generally, muscles work in pair and produce opposite action. For example, biceps, which are flexors, bring flexion, and triceps, which are extensors, bring extension of elbow joint. The muscles which bring opposite action are called antagonistic. If one member of a pair is capable of bending the joint by pulling of bones, the other member is capable of straightening the same joint also by pulling. For example, biceps and triceps of upper arm are antagonistic to each other. In an antagonistic pair of muscles, one member is much stronger than the other. For example, the biceps which flex the arm are stronger than the triceps which extend it. The fundamental characteristic of muscle is contraction. Therefore, muscles can only pull and not push the bone. The response or contraction of striated muscles is quick and for short duration. Therefore, these muscles are prone to fatigue. These muscles are neurogenic, that is, need repeated stimulus from central nervous system, CNS. Some important antagonistic muscles. 1. Flexor. On contraction results in bending or flexion of a joint. For example, biceps. Extensor. On contraction results in straightening or extension of a joint. For example, triceps. 2. Abductor. It moves body part away from the body axis. For example, deltoid muscle of shoulder moves the arm away from the body. Adductor. It moves body part towards the body axis. For example, latissimus dorsi of shoulder moves the arm near to the body. 3. Pronator, to turn the palm downward, backward. Supinator, to turn the palm upward, forward. 4. Levator, raises a body part. Depressor, lowers the body part. 5. Protractor, to move forward. Retractor, to move backward. 6. Sphincters, circular muscles present at inner side wall of anus, stomach, etc. for closure and opening. Contractile proteins. The muscle fibers show presence of many myofibrils. Each myofibril has many myofilaments made up of proteins, actin and myosin. Actin filament is thin and made up of a pair of filamentous, that is F, proteins, which is a polymer of globular, that is G, actins. Myosin filaments are thick and they are made up of many meromyosins. Each meromyosin has globular head with short arm called heavy meromyosin or HMM and a tail called light meromyosin LMM. Head shows an active ATP, a enzyme, and has binding sites for ATP and active sites for actin.
Actin filament. It is also a complex type of contractile protein. It consists of 3 different components. F-actin. It forms the backbone of actin filament. It is double-stranded protein. Each strand is composed of polymerized G-actin molecules. One ADP molecule is attached to each G-actin molecule. Second, tropomyosin. The actin filament contains 2 additional protein strands that are polymers of tropomyosin molecules. Each strand is loosely attached to an F-actin. In the resting stage, tropomyosin physically covers the active binding sites for myosin of the actin strand. Third, troponin. It is a complex of 3 globular proteins which are attached approximately 2/3 distance along each tropomyosin molecule. It has affinity for actin, tropomyosin, and calcium ions. The troponin complex is believed to attach the tropomyosin to the actin. The strong affinity of troponin to calcium ions is believed to initiate the contraction process.
Mechanism of muscle contraction. Most accepted theory of muscle contraction is sliding filament theory. It states that during muscle contractions, sliding of thin filaments over the thick filaments takes place. Nerve endings of motor neuron innervates each muscle. The junction between motor neuron and sarcolemma of muscle fiber is called motor end plate. At the axonic ends, neurotransmitter called acetylcholine is released on getting signals from CNS. It generates an action potential in the sarcolemma. It causes release of Ca2+ with troponin on actin filaments and removes masking of active site of actin filament between myosin filaments. It results in shortening of sarcomere by reducing I-band. Myosin releases ADP and becomes relaxed. Again, whole process is repeated, causing further sliding. This continues till Ca2+ ions are pumped. When Ca2+ ions are pumped back, the masking of actin filaments takes place. Repeated activation of muscles leads to accumulation of lactic acid due to anaerobic breakdown of glycogen, causing muscle fatigue. The contractile units of muscle are sarcomeres formed by thin actin filaments and thick myosin filaments. Unlike the other two muscular tissues, the striated muscle fibers are packed together in connective tissue into distinct bundles called muscle bundles. In human body, about 640 muscles are present. Each muscle contains many fasciculi, and each fasciculus contains bundle of muscle fibers. Striated muscles are found attached to skeleton by means of tendons. Tendons are inelastic, thick bands of white fibrous connective tissue which give firm attachment to muscle with bone.
Physiology of muscle relaxation. When the muscle is relaxed, the active sites remain covered with tropomyosin and troponin complex. Due to this, myosin cannot interact with active site of actin and therefore contraction cannot occur. When an action potential, that is impulse, comes to muscle through motor end plate, it spreads throughout the sarcolemma of the myofibril. The transverse tubules of sarcoplasmic reticulum releases large number of calcium ions into sarcoplasm. These calcium ions interact with troponin molecules. This interaction inactivates troponin-tropomyosin complex. This leads to change in the structure of tropomyosin. As a result, it gets detached from the active site of actin, F-actin filament. Thus, active site becomes uncovered. Now, head of the myosin cleaves the ADP and derives energy. Using this energy, myosin gets attached to the uncovered active site of actin and results in the formation of actomyosin complex. The myosin heads are now tilted backwards and pull the attached actin filament inwardly. This results in contraction of the muscle fibers. Properties of muscles on electrical stimulation. A. Single muscle twitch. A muscle contraction initiated by a single brief stimulation is called a single muscle twitch. It occurs in 3 stages: a latent period of no contraction, a contraction period, and a relaxation period. B. Summation. If the muscle is stimulated before the end of the twitch, it generates greater tension, that is, summation or addition of effect takes place. Repeated stimuli will produce increasing strength of contraction, staircase phenomenon. C. Tetanus. If stimulation is very rapid and frequent, the muscle does not have time to relax. It remains in a state of contraction called tetanus. D. Refractory period. Immediately after one stimulus, the muscle fiber cannot respond to another stimulus. This resting or refractory period is about 0.02 seconds. E. Threshold stimulus. For a muscle fiber to contract, a certain minimum strength or intensity of stimulus is required. This is called threshold stimulus. F. All or none principle. A stimulus below threshold will not result in contraction. A threshold stimulus will result in contraction. This contraction leads to maximum force. Higher stimulus will not increase force of contraction. That is, a muscle fiber contracts either fully or not at all. This is all or none principle. All types of muscle fibers and nerve fibers obey this law. G. Oxygen debt. During strenuous exercise, muscles' oxygen supply rapidly becomes insufficient to maintain oxidative phosphorylation of respiratory substrate. At this stage, muscles contract anaerobically and accumulate lactic acid produced by anaerobic glycolysis. Lactic acid produces less ATP and is toxic. It causes tiredness, pain, and muscle cramps. During recovery, oxygen consumption of the muscle far exceeds than that in the resting state. This extra oxygen consumed during recovery is called oxygen debt of the muscle.
Lever mechanisms. Movements of different parts of the body are usually made easier due to lever actions in the skeleton. The lever of the first order, where the power P and the weight W act as the fulcrum F in between, is represented by extension of the arm at the elbow by the action of triceps muscles A and resting of skull on first and second neck vertebrae. The lever of the second order, where the fulcrum is at one end of the lever and power at the other end with the weight in between, is represented by the gastrocnemius muscle raising weight of the body on the toes, B. The lever of the third order, where the fulcrum is at one end and the weight at the other with the power in between, is represented by the biceps muscle flexing the arm, C.